All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to be hosting our final show. We've had about 8 weeks, or eight different episodes that we've hosted, and we've created some incredible collateral to share with the customer success community. I really want to call out and thank Gainsight for sponsoring this show and really making it about the community and simplifying customer success because that's what this show is really all about. And I'm really excited to end the series with one of my favorite brands and companies that I've leveraged when I've wanted to learn something, and that's Coursera. And so today we have our guest from Coursera. He is the Senior Director of Professional Services, and his name is Himanshu Koshi. So, Himanshu, thank you for joining us. I know that your story will inspire customer success leaders, admins, and operational leaders. And we want to leave the audience today with some actionable key tips on building their customer success playbooks and learn about what you wish you would have known before you started this amazing journey. So, Himanshi, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Amelia, for having me on the show. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, so maybe you can do a better job than I did introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, where are you, and more about
Sure.
your role and what you've been doing leading up to this transformation you took Coursera through.
Absolutely. Happy to do that. So my name is Himanshu, and I'm the Senior Director of Professional Services at Coursera. For those of you who may not know what Coursera is, we are an education technology platform with more than 87 million learners worldwide, and we have more than 5,000 courses on our platform, more than 550 specializations, more than 60 certificates, and several projects and now even online degrees, full length online degrees, more than 30 of them on our platform. Um, so as you can imagine, we have a bunch of different content modalities that resonate with different types of consumers. Are of course B2C consumers, B2C learners, but also our enterprise customers. So what falls within my purview are three teams. The first team is Industry Partner Services, which is a team of technical account managers that work with our industry partners to author content on our platform. Second is Content Production Services team, which is a team of program managers that helps and assists in online education content production. And third team is Enterprise Services, which is perhaps most relevant to today's conversation. This is a team of implementation managers and of solutions architects who are responsible for deploying our enterprise product solution to our enterprise customers. Right now, we have more than 6,000 institutions that are engaging with us through our enterprise product through
Wow.
three key, through three key business segments, which is Coursera for Business, Coursera for Government, and Coursera for Campuses. And what this means, really refers to is companies, governments, and universities using our content or leveraging our catalog for different use cases, ranging from workforce development and reskilling and upskilling, all the way to employability. So that's kind of like a quick overview and context of what I do and what falls within my purview at Coursera.
Amazing. So you have a lot on your plate and you've been at Coursera for a while. Tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were thinking about how do we scale our organization? How do we get a true view of our customers, especially when you have three very distinct segments that you're serving?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I go back 4.5 years when I started at Coursera, it was in our initial stages of launching our enterprise business, and one of the first things that I wanted to do was to really understand the customer's journey with Coursera. What is the customer's life cycle? Like you can traditionally think of this in three broad phases. One is pre-sales, sales. Second is launch and onboarding. And third is post-launch and renewal, upsell, customer success, right? So if you think about it in that traditional way, what falls within my purview is this deployment and onboarding phase. And I remember the day I joined Coursera, there was a pretty large backlog of customers that were waiting to be deployed, and we were like really figuring out how will this how to really have a meaningful, valuable deployment of our product in a way that can help our customers move their business objectives further and get closer and closer to achieving their goals, right? So I think one of the first things that I learned was to be able to really understand what are the customers' challenges and what are the customers' motivations in working with Coursera, in leveraging our content. What are the different use cases? And that usually gives a good understanding of what are the challenges that we may be facing in our deployment, in our process. And that approach really helped in articulating and creating our implementation methodology. So our implementation methodology, it has four phases, which are discovery, build, launch, and adoption. And remember, this methodology has gone through several versions and several phases of evolution year on year as our business has grown, as we've worked with a whole variety and breadth of customers, and as we've worked on different types of use cases for our customers as well, right? So once we kind of established this methodology, we started small and we started piloting this methodology with a few partners, with a few customers, and seeing getting like really rich feedback of what was working, what was not. For example, we modified our discovery phase pretty significantly for each of these three segments. So and this is pretty intuitive also, right? You know, for a company in the financial services sector versus a company in media and tech, or versus a company in oil and natural gas, like their motivations, their impetus to work on a reskilling initiative is going to be different. So how can the discovery be very rich and be very meaningful, so that we can set our platform and configure our platform to meet all these requirements and use cases, is an example of how we have evolved from phase to phase and year on year. And then we over the last year or so, I would say we were facing a couple of key challenges. One was that while on one hand, kind of it's I hope I don't butcher this phrase, which I keep hearing in the US very very often, which is like we are flying the plane as we are building it, or we are driving the car as we are building it. So we're kind of doing that, right? And I think a lot of CS community professionals here on the call will also empathize and relate to that, right? So this past year, as I was saying, we reached, of course, a critical level of complexity in terms of our, deploying our solution to these three different business segments and use cases, and we were doing all of the operationalization of this methodology using a host of different tools. It could range from like spreadsheets to slides and presentations to documents, and different customers would have slightly different variations of this methodology and how we'll track this project plan and all of that. And that's when we were thinking of what could be a nice CS tool that will help us to operationalize this in a way that that will give us that will not create this fragmentation, that will not create this confusion, and operationalizing that has helped us tremendously, which I'll talk about more at a later stage. But when I was actually one of the beneficiaries when we got Gainsight at Coursera and integrated with our CRM. So as a part of the discovery that Gainsight did with me for my professional services use case, it was evident that they had some ideas and some solutions that would make this exercise of creating a project plan and converting this methodology of discovery, build, launch, and adoption into a project plan across different tools and technologies into something which is more consistent, which is more customizable,
Mhm.
which is easier to manage, and of course easier to track. Right. So we used the success plan feature of Gainsight to operationalize this. Now, remember, as I was saying, we have three different segments, right? Coursera for business, government, and campuses. So we created three different playbooks for our deployment methodology, and that got implemented and automated through the Gainsight success plans. So now what happens
So
essentially is, sorry, go ahead, Amelia.
no, I only want to pause you because I
Yeah.
don't want to give away everything. I want to
Okay.
understand what you did next. But before I do, I would love to ask the audience, how are you using playbooks today? And a poll is going to come up to the audience for them to be able to answer that question. I'd love to get insights from the people on the call today. While they're answering that, I will say we did launch a poll online a few days
Mm.
ago. And the question is, are you tracking project resource time tracking or uh, financials within Gainsight? That is a question from someone. Maybe we'll answer that while we're waiting for people to fill in the poll.
Sure. Can you repeat the question? Are you tracking project
Yeah.
resource time tracking of financials within Gainsight? That's the question.
Yes. Now, are
Yes.
you doing
Okay.
that?
So
Yes.
yeah. So that's a great question, by the way, and we want to do that next. We know we are working on a solution with Gainsight on how can we do time tracking. There obviously are ways in which we can use the existing feature set. Right now, we don't do
Amazing.
it, but that's definitely the direction we are going with. Yeah.
And I think that brings up a really good point. Thank you for that question. When you're implementing technologies, and Himanshu, you mentioned this, it's been a phased approach. You did your
Yeah.
first, you built your customer journey. You looked at the segmentations and how the customer journeys varied. That's really important. Built the use cases. You modified everything up based on your learnings, and then you started selection process of a platform, and now you're doing
Right.
a phased approach because you've been
Exactly.
implementing different phases and different elements of Gainsight as you're learning. You're flying this plane, but the best part is that you've gotten off spreadsheets, people doing things in different ways, and now there's more automation. So we will talk about that a more in a moment. I'd love to see the poll launched and what people answered before I answer any other questions. I see more are coming in. So Paul, our producer, is just getting the answers, and we'll see the answers in a moment. And
Yeah.
are you planning, Himanshu, while we're waiting for that, to connect your general ledger when you implement the financial resource tracking piece?
Not at the moment. No. We have a different system for that, but also that's a much bigger discussion like for our company. It's a big
Yeah. Okay.
decision also if you want to do that. Yeah. So not at the moment.
Okay. So you're taking one step at a time,
Yeah. Yeah.
implementing this piece. All right. And when did you launch Gainsight, or once you selected it, when did you launch it?
Yeah. Yeah, so we launched this specific feature set for operationalizing our implementation workflow earlier this year, Q1 of this year, and we've seen massive success, right? Like as you were mentioning earlier, Amelia, of course it's a phase-wise approach. We should it's always whenever you're deploying a new technology, new platform, even when like we deploy our platform with our customers, we always recommend this crawl, walk, run approach because there is an element of iterative learning, right? Like you do a few things, you tackle the low hanging fruit first, learn from some of the challenges that you're taking on, and then implement those modifications in your next iteration. So that's how even we are approaching it, and we know we have a good sense, I would say, of what is our next iteration going to look like in 2022.
Okay, great. And so
Yep.
it looks like we're going to launch soon what people answered in terms of the playbook. But when you implemented these playbooks, what did you implement them for? Was it onboarding, champion loss, QBRs, or maybe something completely different?
Yeah, so it involved, as I said, it involved two key aspects of the customer's journey. One is, of course, the deployment effort of configuring our product to meet the customer's need, and second was onboarding the customer on the platform and getting them ready to show the value to the learners in their companies.
Okay, great. So it looks like the main reason people are using playbooks is for onboarding new customers
Onboarding,
and
yeah,
then any processes that require automation. And when we put this on LinkedIn, we launched a similar poll. It was
yeah,
predominantly for automation and then onboarding next. So
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
These are turned around, but yes, it looks like very similar results. So thank you for showing that. All right. So,
yeah.
what has changed? What are some of the main changes that have happened since you've implemented
Yeah.
this automation and onboarding processes?
Yeah, so like I was saying, the what essentially happens now is that when an opportunity gets closed, this Gainsight success plan gets automatically created. So the morning cup of coffee for an implementation manager is to go log into our CRM and look at log into Gainsight and really see what are the projects that are in their docket, what are the next set of activities for each of those projects. And now an implementation manager is in a much better place to plan her rest of the week and rest of the day and sometimes even rest of the month, right? Like there's a lot of predictability that we've been able to add to the workflows. Also, some key automations help us to do consistent reporting of project statuses and onboarding statuses to our customer, which adds a lot of value because then it helps us drive both internal and external stakeholder accountability, right? Like when we start our project plan by saying that we will have an onboarding session on day 15 and we will have another one on day 21 or whatever may be the workflow. How many of the customer team members really were present to get onboarded? Did they complete the pre-work? Like all of these things we can track now in our system. And then the third thing that we also have implemented kind of end to end, if you think about the customer life cycle in the launch phase, is our post implementation survey. So once the project ends, based on like the segment of the customer, a survey gets sent out automatically from Gainsight, asking it's an NPS survey, and we have some additional questions also. But by doing this, we're able to create an end-to-end feedback loop and enhance our processes. So when I was saying earlier that we have a good sense of what do we need to change in 2022 in our implementation methodology and in our success plans on Gainsight, a big contributor to that, to getting that clarity, is the feedback that we've received from the customers, right? So making customers a part of your evolution is such a big positive that we're experiencing. And the last thing, like all of this encapsulated in one, is that um, you know it, we don't want our implementation managers, or we don't want our professional services team members to just be the ones going off of a checklist and like checking boxes, right? Like that doesn't add value
Mhm.
to the customer. And then creating these fragmented project plans and fragmented onboarding plans was not giving sufficient bandwidth and time to the implementation managers to do that value added work. Now that this is automated, and now that this is a part of, like, just a regular work DNA of our IAMs, implementation managers, they're now able to focus more time on adding value to the customer, right? Like our discovery conversations are different, and we are seeing this, we are experiencing this through our feedback mechanism as well. Our customers are
Amazing.
definitely appreciating that. Yeah.
That's great. So these implementation surveys are closing the loop. They're giving more insights to your management. I'm assuming they have
Yes,
access, can see these reports and make decisions based
yes,
on them. Given I'm
yes,
seeing right now over LinkedIn, people are doing their planning. They suddenly realize they have budget. They're figuring out how do we spend it and make 2022 even better. They need that
yeah,
reporting. So besides reporting, is there anything else that didn't exist before this? You're talking about reporting, automation,
yeah,
more
yeah,
focus on discovery and conversations. Is there
yeah.
anything else we're missing when we're thinking about selecting a platform and implementing it?
Yeah, I would add two more points to this. First point is resource planning, right? Like this, we
Mm,
had a certain understanding of how much time will it take to deploy a certain type of customer, whether it is government, university, or company. And our goal obviously is to drive leverage, right? Like to be able to do more perhaps with less, but also to add value as we are doing this. And we are seeing now we are having a tool which can give us that data, right? Like if what are the we can look at the different, let's say, Coursera for Business implementations that have happened in this quarter, and we can see what is the critical path, where can we automate things to make the deployment even smoother, what are the challenges and obstacles that we can remove, and that helps us ultimately in figuring out what kind of resourcing we need for the next year. If we are able to drive this leverage, do we need X number of people next year, or less than X, or more than X, right? Like that level of data analysis has been super helpful. And the second thing, which I was going to mention, is whenever you're, of course, deploying a new platform, especially in CS purview, change management is extremely important, like being very deliberate
mm.
and being very intentional about identifying the champions of this new tool, new platform, and getting some early wins which can be leveraged for popularizing the adoption, is going to be extremely important, and that it definitely was a learning that we had as we were rolling this out at Coursera.
Wow, so that has definitely been one of the top courses that we've been teaching at Growth Molecules is change management. There's such a hunger to ensure that teams are being taken care of. We're hearing about this great resignation, but if you're actually explaining to your employees why this change, what's in it for me, there can be a big impact and people can feel good about being part of the transformation. And then when it
Mhm.
comes to capacity planning, resource planning, as you mentioned, that's another big one. People are trying to figure out how can we forecast, how can we plan accordingly and make sure we're asking for the right budget to enable our
Yeah,
customers so that our teams are not burning out. I actually didn't
yeah.
know you could do that with Gainsight. So thank you for that. As we
Thank
wrap up, and for anyone who has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I would love to ask you two last questions. The first one is, what do you think has been critical to your success, especially when so many people tell me, oh, um, customer success platforms are complicated. I don't want to mess with it. We can just use a CRM. And maybe they are thinking of a platform, a CS platform of many years ago, and we all know they've evolved, gotten
you.
better, faster implementation. So, curious if someone's thinking about implementing a platform, what has been critical to your success and what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I think what what will drive ultimately the success of any platform is what does it do for the customer? Like I like to ask myself and my team members and my managers this question: that what are we doing fundamentally to change the way we work with our customers? Is it helping in adding um, any value to our engagement with them? And I think one very important aspect of doing this is by setting the right metrics of success as well. So we did a lot of work with the Gainsight deployment team in figuring out like what is a good measure of success for adoption of the success plans? Like, is it the number of times someone logs in? Is it the number of success plans created and closed? Is it the time to value? Like, can we prove indirectly if time to value has reduced by adoption of a tool like that? And we have come up with some learnings this year. We definitely consider 2021 as our benchmark year, which we are going to leverage to see what the next year will look like. But to kind of just in summary, to answer your question, first is ask yourself, what are you doing to fundamentally change the way you work with your customers? Is it adding any value to the engagement? Second is define and design the right set of metrics to drive adoption.
Okay, great. Those are great tips. Thank you. We have a question for you. Have you used a
Yeah.
PSA tool prior to leveraging Gainsight? Resource management is something that I've done in Gainsight before and I loved it.
Yeah, we did not. Gainsight is the first tool that we're using. As I said, we were kind of all over the place with our tools before Gainsight. So yeah, the answer to that question is no. And I would agree. Like resource planning or resource management is like the data that we're getting from Gainsight is an important contributor to how we do resource planning.
Okay, and we have another question for you. Who was involved in implementing Gainsight at Coursera? If
Right.
CSOps, please advise to what extent were CSMs involved in the project? And I just want to say I love this question because you never
Right.
hear sales managers implementing Salesforce or any other CRM, yet CSMs are often so involved in doing a lot of the
Yeah.
heavy lifting. And I do agree they should be testing, they should be in the user acceptance testing. After all, they're going to be doing the majority of their work in the platform. But curious who was responsible and how were CSMs
Yes.
involved?
Yeah, so I mean, whoever has asked this question, their guess is absolutely right. It was the CS Ops team that implemented Gainsight, and they did a really fantastic job at not just involving the CSMs, but also implementation managers like us, and even sales team members to get all their inputs when we were working in the discovery phase and then through the entire deployment phase. So it was the CS Ops, and definitely it was a very deliberate effort. It was like a part of their OKRs. It was part of their goals, I think you need that kind of rigor to be able to move the needle with such a massive project.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for all your insights. For anyone who's joined us, we will be sending one last email out with a tool that Himanshu has offered to share with the community. So thank you for that. And we will be launching something new in February. So stay tuned for that. And Himanshu, any last word you want to share with the community before we end the show?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Emilia, for having me on the show. I definitely enjoyed this conversation. I would just leave you with perhaps three tips that you can use if you're working on such a project. First is go back to the customer journey and understand what are the customer pain points, what is going to generate value for the customer. Second is identify a tool that works best for you and be very objective about that. And third would be being very deliberate and intentional about change management. And I feel these are the things that I have learned, which can be, if can be helpful to the CS community. I'll be really happy.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We'll see you next online. Bye, everyone.